are the endpoints that doesn't have protection in order to help you to provide more security to your B2C applications or B2B, doesn't matter, to make sure that they are secure. Third situation here, that is, so the main goal here is also to follow the best practices that we had in the past and now apply to reactive web. How many of you doesn't know what is 4-layer canvas? Please raise your hand. Okay, so I will explain. So the thing is, we have a framework that we call 4-layer canvas that will base as in 4 layers that will start from bottom to top. In the bottom, we'll have some, for example, connectors or themes that we call it, is where we have the CSS and JavaScript that can be applied in multiple types of applications. And we have the core services, is where we have all the business logic that we apply in different lines of business. And then, of course, we have the third layer, that is the end user, is where you have your front ends for your mobile applications or web applications. And then we have a fourth layer that we call it orchestrator, is where we have, like, for example, a portal that has multiple applications to be referenced. Actually, we have a talk that is explaining what is the 4-layer canvas in the same time as here. However, this is just a quick summary for you. Then, of course, we have the challenge of user experience. And here, we are actually focused on performance and user experience in terms of reactive web. However, because we are dealing with something like parallel data fetching, or animations, or transitions, this comes with some challenges. That is, where should I put my animations? Where should I fetch my information when I'm trying to share something with the user? So, moving forward to what is the parallel data fetching, we'll do a bit of a comparison between what was in the past, in traditional web, and now what we have in reactive web. So, in the traditional one, what we have is only server-side code, and I can give you an example that was really horrible to me. That was, for example, when you try to do run JavaScript, you need to go to the server to then execute something on the client side. So in this way, we come up with reactive web that actually you can do just client actions as like with JavaScript, and of course you can then add some JavaScript in there, but it's something that we want to and try to avoid to use so many JavaScript to make sure that you have available the code on the client side. And then we have, for example, the data fetching that now, actually in the past, we had a preparation where we have all the sequence of aggregates or actions or APIs that we need to fetch, and only after that we will deliver the page to the user. So looking into the way that we had, it was synchronous, so we didn't have any ability to actually produce and show something to the user in the meanwhile that we were fetching data, and now we have this ability. So if you have, for example, 2 aggregates that one is fetching 100,000 items, and then you have just an aggregate that is fetching 2, you are able to show something different for the 100,000 and of course the 2. So it will fetch much faster one and the other. So it's great to have that. And last but not least, one thing that is really cool is actually we don't need anymore to take care about Ajax refresh, for example. We just need to change, for example, variable or refresh an aggregate, and automatically the data will appear. For the ones that suffer, actually for the groups mostly, that suffer with view state is also something that we just built, so it's quite cool to not be worried about that. Then we have screen transitions, and with screen transitions, it comes a really nice experience. So now we have the ability to navigate between screens with different kind of animations that we have in mobile applications. So the feeling is quite cool, as you can see here. And just before we move forward to the best practices, I want to share with you some story that is quite cool. That is how these work as a team, right? Because now we'll have different teams working for different applications, and of course now with the web you also have multiple UI modules available. In order to talk a bit about the parallel data fetching, we'll compare a bit the difference that we had in the past in just small steps. So the first step will be we are just loading the web page, and we have a preparation, right, that will run everything in sequence. So only after that is when we deliver the content to the end user. So these elements will run in sequence, right? So let's see just a small example that we have with tradition. So I just have my page, I just click, as you can see, it seems that I click but it takes a while, is because it's fetching all the information and then share to the end user. We have the preparation where we have all the code available. Then, let's see how Reactive works. So first, I have my page that is loading. Automatically, I will share something with the user, that is, my DOM is loading. And in the meanwhile, I have my GET requests, that is my list, that is already available for the user. And then, after a while, it will render the data from the shard. So this is how it will work. So you need to take care of the free space that you have on your screen, because most of the times we are working with services or APIs that would normally take a while, and this will be the challenge with them to apply some empty states to make sure that you have something there to show to the user, because maybe the code will take a while. But we'll see later on how this will work. So here is a quick example how to apply two different types of data and then fetch on the screen, as you can see here. So I just click on the page and automatically will render both information in that specific page. Then, dependencies between aggregates. This is something new that we didn't have, and it was a mess in terms of mobile development for the ones that suffer with that. So, meaning that every time that you have a dependency on an aggregate, you have to use on after fetch and then use that aggregate to run afterwards. But in this case, I will just grab a really common use case, that is when you need to filter from country to state and then city. And this is the differences that you need to consider. So for example, if we look into the traditional web, we have all the components like labels and drop-downs. However, as you can see here, we have a wrapper that is a container, and then we have a container for the city and the state. And the reason why we are doing this is because we are preparing for refreshing the content inside the combo boxes or the drop-downs to make sure that we have the right information. In the other side, what we have is Reactive Web, where we don't care about Ajax refresh, so we'll just be careful with the UI structure. So as you can see here, I just have my levels, I just have my containers with the classes, and that's it. So now let's see how is the logic. So traditional web, once again, we have all the aggregates fetching one by one, and then of course we deliver the information to the user, and then in the reactive web we have this new ability, and again, for the ones that only build mobile applications, this is also new, that you can have a way to decide when you have parallel aggregates to define if they will run only on demand or if they will start at the start actually. So in this case, I will just fetch my aggregate in the beginning. That is the reason why I put has at the start. And then the other two is only when they will be refreshed, okay? So moving forward, we have now two actions, one to filter the states and the other to filter the cities. And here, what I can do with traditional web is actually refresh those aggregates and then refresh the UI using the Ajax refresh. If we look to the other side, so the reason why I put only on demand, so what I'm doing now is refresh that data and automatically will filter the information that I have there. So it's pretty cool and pretty easy to do. So again, about empty states, this is now really important as we already have that importance for mobile as well. So moving forward, what was the challenge is when we have an API that takes a while and then we have a blank page to show to the user. As we can see here, so I have my last requests and the rest of the chart, and I don't have anything to show to the user. So what is the solution? So you will see for most of you that already built mobile applications, it's quite easy because you already know how to do it. However, for the ones that is the first time that you are seeing how to develop these kind of situations, in every single aggregate you have a property that it will tell you when the aggregate is finished. And when it's finished, it's ready to be the screen. So here what I'm using is, for example, for our list of requests, I'm just using this property and saying, okay, Before you finish to fetch the data, you will see a loading, for example. So this will be the end result, and it was correct. One, I just used the loading for the last request. Of course, you can then use fancy animations and things like that. However, I just use a small example where you can, based on, and then use your own animations. One really cool thing is most of the screen templates, the ones that when you try to create a new page, most of them already have this in place. So you can go there, inspect the code, and see how you can apply those to your use case. Okay, so it's quite cool. Then, about great user experience. So if you remember, in traditional web, it was quite hard to achieve really cool animations without CSS or JavaScript if needed. However, now what we did is actually bring all the UI components that we have in mobile and bring now to the Outsystems web reactive. Okay. So what this came up, it was a really good way of animating just one part of the screen. Like for example, here is just a quick solution. So I had that 3 blocks and I just wanted to animate in different ways, okay? So what I did for that, so I just used one component that is from Outsystems UI, that is animate, where you have a bunch of animations that you can choose and apply to those specific components. You can also decide what are the delays when they will get to the screen and also the speed. So let's see how it looks like in the final result. So this is pretty cool, right? So when you look for the first time, they were just static content, and now I just used animate for 3 of them. One for the left to right, in the middle fade in, and then the other one was the right to left. So it's quite cool to have this sensation. So moving forward, something that is really cool for also the ones that have been breaking codes with JavaScript in mobile apps like me in the past 3 years, we have now client variables. This is something that is really important, at least not only for the web, but also for mobile. We had a lot of JavaScript on initializers that we use for set variables, for example, and to make sure that we don't need to go to the server to get more information and ask more than one time. So this is mostly for performance use cases, when we want to remove the complexity of calling multiple times server calls to the server. We'll see first the difference between session variables and client variables. This means that most of the use cases, we use session variables like when we do scaffolding and things like that. And nowadays we don't have any more session variables. So we will need to understand a bit the difference between those, and then of course you can apply the client variables for most of your use cases. Also we'll see the difference, as I said before, the other times that we use onInitialize, that was an event that we use for mobile to set variables to our aggregates. We'll see how to use client variables, much easier, we will see. And then of course we will see a few examples how to say, for example, a filter that I want to have on my aggregate that I'm trying to filter, something. So moving forward, session variables only available on traditional web. The first comparison is they were actually saved or stored on the server side, and the difference is that in client variables, of course, they will be only on the client side allocated. Another really important topic is when they will be removed. So first, in session variables, the only way that we have this opportunity is actually to remove all the existing window pop-ups that we have with the website, or we do logout. In this case, every time that you have a new update for the client variables, you need to then log out and log in. So, really important note. I mentioned that you are on Service Studio, you change a variable, you publish, what will happen? Any idea? Any idea? If not, what will happen is that actually you don't see that variable updated because the user needs to log out and then to log in. Okay? Another important topic is regarding to where in the old times what we have is records. We can set some records for session variables or a list of records. In the middle, of course, this wasn't recommended, but some of the projects needs to have those values. In client variables, it's not possible to have records or a list of records of information because we want to make it more simpler. And of course, if you need more of that information, you can create more client variables, okay? Then, the challenge that I just said before, we just want to have something on the window or in session storage. So in this case, what we came up is actually just using the solution of, you create a small client variable, for example. If you remember, when you do scaffolding, normally it was indexed to a session variable. Now it's just remove that session variable and apply the client variable, and what you have is the ability to go to the aggregates and filter with the client variable as well. So pretty cool news as well. Then this is just the final result. So it's the same as you did with the session variable. We just filter the name and automatically will appear your results. Then, of course, Outsystems UI. How many of you doesn't know what is Outsystems UI? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have someone there. However, Outsystems UI is our UI framework that we use to compile and create those screens with just drag and drop components. And one really cool thing is that we no longer need to change mindset when we want to build mobile applications and web applications. So this was our main goal, to make sure that we have one single line of development. Make sure that people doesn't need to know every time to learn how to build those web and mobile applications. However, in some cases, most of us that normally use traditional web use something like rich widgets, right? How many of you doesn't need to use rich widgets? Please raise your hand. Okay. Quite nice. I thought it was more. Okay. So this was my challenge. I just had to create an autocomplete using Reactive Web, and I came up with a solution. And actually, it was a solution that I already developed in the past for mobile applications. So, and now my question was, how can I apply something that I already did in mobile to web? And it's actually possible. So you just need to convert your module to React, and automatically you can reference something that you already built for mobile application. And in this case, I just used a small example to show the autocomplete, and this was the final solution. So I just type my name, and we'll have two types of lists. The one with the suggestions, and when I click, I'll have a list with my result. So it's quite simple, right? So this is the way that you can build your home components, and if you already built mobile components, you can just reuse it without again, reinventing the wheel. So it's quite cool. And just for the last, I will give you some tips and tricks that you can then grab it and make useful for your next projects. How many of you already tried Reactive Web? Please raise your hand. Okay, nice. A lot of people. Cool. And how many of you already have this situation, to have lists inside lists? Please raise your hand. Okay, a lot of people. So it was what I expected. So this is the problem, that Reactive Web is really cool, yes. However, you need to have some careful to make sure that you don't have problems of performance like this one. So what I just did here, I just create a list of information from my user, and then I create a weblog that has an aggregate inside to give me the department. So what do you think that will be the problem here? Any idea? So let's see this example. So I just fetched my page, and this was what happened. I just have 200 calls to the server because I had that specific weblog inside one page. So this means that all these requests to the server, and don't forget, we are in the client side, so it will be round trips to the server, so latency and things like that will happen. So this will be a bottleneck of performance. So the main goal here is actually use, for example, get from other sources, using an advanced query where we will filter all the information needed for that specific logs. In that order, you don't have 200 requests to the server. So be careful with this situation. Another one is jQuery. Is, of course, if you already remember, last year I was speaking about how to develop mobile applications, and we already have jQuery as a possible performance issue, and also because we use React and behind the scenes, of course, and when we use something to manipulate the DOM or changing the DOM could have this kind of issues. So again, avoid to use something like append content using jQuery to some part of the page. Also, avoid JavaScript, plain JavaScript, to move things from one part to the other, because this will interfere with the render of our applications. And also, you don't need anymore to use jQuery to have the classes. You can just use the normal style sheet with conditions. It's much easier to do that. And then we have a really nice initiative that I want to share with you, is that we, all the company, we want to make sure that your components that you already developed as a community that has jQuery that you use every day in your projects, we'll try to help you how to convert those in just JavaScript, plain JavaScript. Make sure that every one of you can reuse those components with any kind of issue in terms of using jQuery. Another thing is, every time that you think in jQuery, try to always find out a solution that uses just JavaScript plain, or even if we already have a component on Forge, maybe in mobile, and then you can convert just for the web. Then, a really nice new as well. So now we have the ability to build components or modules that are libraries. Of course, we have a few limitations, however, they are used to at least use for connectors or something like Outsystems UI, that is a theme that can be reused for multiple applications. This is also cool for you to use in your architecture point of view. Okay? Another point is, already said a lot of times, that you can convert your mobile applications to reactive applications, so you can reuse actually your codes that you already developed, not only in the UI perspective, but also in the business logic area, and then just you need to go through the model that is mobile, and then you just convert to reactive module. Okay, quite cool stuff as well. Last but not least, we already have 20 components for Reactive Web nowadays. We hope and we count on you to build more and more on top of this. Also to convert the ones that we have for traditional web, to move forward and have them for Reactive Web as well. I actually need to do my job as well, because I have 20 components on Forge and I didn't update it yet. However, I'll try to do it as soon as possible. So just before we end this session, I just want to give you a quick recap of what we learned today. So first, a single development experience, meaning that when you are developing for mobile, you are also developing for the web. What is quite good, because you don't need to change, oh, now is the preparation, then on initialize, no parallel fetching. So you no longer need to have that mindset. Then, of course, simplify development. This is more for the ones that start with mobile applications. So things to like use on initialize, on render, on ready, and on after fetch with these new things like client variables, like parallel data fetching with dependencies. We are trying to remove that complexity from your path in order to build your web and mobile applications. Another point is regarding to performance. With this new approach, if we compare traditional to the reactive, of course now you can improve the way that you build your web and mobile applications. Again, one thing that is really cool is all these features that you see, at least, it will be available also in mobile. Actually, they are already there, so you just need to use them. It's quite cool. And again, for jQuery, try to avoid to use it. Of course, it doesn't kill anyone if you use it. It's just you need to be careful when you do a DOM manipulation, okay? Just beforehand, I would like to thank you all for all the feedback that you have been sharing with us. This was only possible because you shared that feedback with us. Also, it simplified my job, saying to the product team that this was important. So it's quite cool because of that. So a round of applause for you. That's helped us a lot with this feedback. And I hope that you bring, again, more feedback to make sure that we can improve the product as well. So thank you very much. And that's it. Thank you again. Any questions?
we still have